Boom, hey internets. On this video, we're gonna talk about why you should stay away from flips, also known as bites, where you're either imitating or using the likeness of a well-known other brand or entity, person, musician for your clothing brand. And stick with me to the end so I can tell you why. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Now, a lot of brands are doing this, like a lot of young brands who don't have a reference on maybe more of the actual business side of this and how branding works with corporate companies and multi-million-dollar established brands. It's very common for you to fall into the idea of copying what you might see out there where someone's doing, let's just say you put Tupac or Biggie or Kobe Bryant or any kind of famous artist, musician on a shirt or referencing something on the shirt. Now, if you're not a legitimate clothing company and you're just putting out the shirts for fun, also I should say for my people who might show at Designer Con and they're artists, they're like actual illustrator artists, there's kind of a gray area where it's called fan art. Okay, but if you're doing mass-produced t-shirts, right, crew and hoodies with a graphic that would have a very recognizable brand or figure, you're running into a territory where you could run into a lawsuit. Now, early in a clothing company, you can get away with it because you're not on their radar, but there's entire estates, even after a iconic person passes, there's an estate that manages their IP, their intellectual property, and all of those legal dealings. So there's someone in a department that just looks out for people who are infringing on their trademark or their IP in any way, right? So if you put out a shirt that has Michael Jackson on it or any kind of famous figure, you can get hit up for a cease and desist. Typically, they'll initially hit you with a cease and desist, say stop making this, but I've definitely heard of scenarios where it goes directly into a lawsuit and it can involve you and retail. It depends on the situation. So that's why I'm saying if you're gonna be a legitimate brand that wants to, eventually make millions and, replace your job, flips, it's typically called flips. In other companies, we've called them bites before. Now, the only reason that vernacular even exists is if you're changing. So for example, I worked at a company where we would do beer labels, was like a category. So we would do the brand name, but we do it in a very popular beer flip. Now that works because it's not another fashion brand, right? Like you don't want to do your version of a Nike shirt. I just feel like that's horrible for a designer or a label to do that. If your logo looks exactly like the Supreme logo and you found the same font but put your brand, that's lame. That's just bad and lazy design. Like obviously you see it's working for Supreme, so as a real art director, you're supposed to say, like do your due diligence, like what about this really works and why is it working for that company? What elements of this logo is working? And it's gonna be the same thing for what multi-million-dollar companies do. If you do the most successful logos of all time, you see that it's simple, it's iconic, it's very easy to spot, right? But this video is more about graphic language in general, so let me not go down that rabbit hole. But we did beer flips at a company and that was good, but we would change it enough where it didn't have the likeness of, it would just have hints of it, like you feel that that's what it's doing, right? So another example that easily comes to mind is when you love your sports team for your city, right? I'm wearing a Yankees hat, but I don't necessarily wear it because I'm a fan of the New York Yankees. I'm just a fan of New York. Jay-Z quotes this in a song where he said he made this hat more famous than the Yankees, and it's true. I wear this hat because I love New York. Now, I could do another hat that has an emblematic NY on it because I love New York, and then obviously this is trademarked. So if I do an NY and do it my own version but keep the same colors, then it kind of evokes the same kind of feeling of that company. So you can see a lot of people do things that are athletic inspired and it has the same colorways as their favorite home team or their favorite athletic team, what have you. That's fine also, but when you're doing flips on graphics or you're referencing anything that's a known entity, I stay away from it because there's lawsuits there and I just want my brand to stand on its own, and the year is busy enough without dealing with getting your lawyer involved with their lawyer and getting into that dance. I would just rather avoid it altogether. Now, you do see graphics that do have any of the aforementioned or famous people on it that aren't from their estate, right? So many times those collaborations, when they announce it, like if Bait does something and they're doing like Hello Kitty or something like that, any entity where you've seen collab before, shout out to Andy Wynn, with all of his food labels, he's doing amazing collabs, and they'll always say yes because it's food times whatever the brand is, whether it's apparel Or like I said, Hello Kitty, you know, he's taking a lot of labels and flipping it and doing some really interesting work with collabs. Now that is the world of license. So you have to make it all legal, because you're gonna ask, well, how come it's out there? The real way to approach that is to approach those companies that own the IP, the intellectual property, and say, hey, we'd like to do a collab with you. We're an apparel brand. And then if it's very popular, you know, they're going to ask for a lot of things. They could ask for a pitch, they're gonna ask for the mock-ups of what it looks like, and you're basically gonna have to convince them that this would be a good thing to do. And they're gonna charge you to use that likeness. Okay, so these are all legal documents. This is an entire process, and that's how licensing works, right? So that's why I mentioned it in the title. But if you're a small company, if you've had some success with it, you're gonna be the exception of the rule, only if you're very serious about your clothing brand going to like a multi-million-dollar brand, all right? So as a former creative director, as a former brand director, where I was running an entire multi-million-dollar brand for my rich boss who owns continues to own 7 labels. I mean, I don't work there anymore, but as a person who was in charge and talking to my lawyers all the time, and I still talk to my lawyers for all of my stuff and consulting and all of that, this is definitely a best practice piece of advice for you guys. So if you stayed to the end, thank you. Here's what I want to tell you. I'm gonna go deeper on this subject with Janelle. She's been on the channel before, marketing guru, a stylist, but worked in the world of licensing and continues to, and has done it for years. So I'm gonna link that below when we get that on, and I'm gonna put these together in some sort of playlist. So we're gonna go deeper in the world of licensing just so you can get that vantage point, all right? So look out for it. See you guys on the next one. Bye.